Welcome back to our class. Today we are going to be looking at the topic called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is one of the topics students have been asking me about to talk about so that they can understand it better. They find a lot of challenges in this topic. Before you go for any topic, you need to understand the concept or the key areas or why is that topic called so. So photosynthesis comes from two words. The first word is photo. When you say photo, it means light. Yes. Then synthesis. Synthesis means manufacture, production or manufacture. So in this case, it means that this process leads to the production or the manufacture of whatever it's manufacturing, but using light as source of energy. So photosynthesis, light must be present, and at the end of the process, manufacture or production must take place. So for the manufacture to take place, light must be present. Hence, photo, light, synthesis, manufacture, meaning that the light is used to produce whatever it is being produced. But in this case, we are looking at the food in plants. And this food is in form of glucose. So let's look at where does it take place? Where does photosynthesis take place? Photosynthesis takes place in a structure called a leaf. But the leaf has its adaptations for it to carry out this process of photosynthesis. There are some things which must be there, which must be present in a leaf so that photosynthesis can take place. In other words, the adaptation of a leaf to carry out photosynthesis. If you look at this leaf, this is the internal structure of a leaf. This leaf, the first layer on top here, is called cuticle. This cuticle is transparent. It means that if it is like this, it allows light to go through. So that is one of adaptation. Imagine that this cuticle was thick enough, and then when light comes in, it bounces back. It means that the cells inside the leaf wouldn't have done the job. Therefore, for the cells to receive the light from the sun or from any source, they have to be with a transparent cuticle. So the cuticle is transparent so that light can be allowed to go through. It has the epidermis. This epidermis, this is the first layer of the cells. Then we have what you call the mesophyll. So epidermis and mesophyll. Mesophyll is divided into two. It has what called a palisade mesophyll and then the spongy mesophyll. Spongy mesophyll is the way you hear it. It is like a sponge. Therefore, it has air spaces in between. So the function of the spongy mesophyll, it means that it will allow air to be taken in. And then the palisade mesophyll, if you look at its cells are packed. It has a lot of chloroplast. So this chloroplast is very important in trapping this light so that there is maximum absorption of light. This leaf is not by mistake that palisade mesophyll is on top and the spongy mesophyll is on bottom. The palisade mesophyll is on top so that maximum light is absorbed. Hence, the upper part of the plant, that's where you find not the upper part of the plant, the upper part of the leaf is where you find the palisade mesophyll. which faces the sun, while the lower part of the leaf, that's where you find the spongy mesophyll, so that maximum air can be trapped. Hence, we shall say that the spongy mesophyll has what you call the intercellular air spaces. Spaces between the different cells. Inter means that in between, cellular, the cell, air spaces, the spaces which is in between the cells. So this leaf has a hole which allow this air to go in and to go out. This hole is having special cells which we call guard cells, but the hole where that air is passing, we call it stomata. If it's one, it's called the stoma. If there are many, we call them stomata. It has specific features it is supposed to have so that this can happen. Yes. It's not just like the hole is just there. This hole has specific time when it opens, it has specific time when it closes. Yes. So it's also another adaptation. So there are so many adaptations which make this leaf to be able or to be suited for its function of photosynthesis. So let's do a small recall about this leaf, because this is grade 10 work. Leaves are adapted for light absorption and also gaseous exchange or gas exchange. In other words, the upper part of the leaf is responsible for trapping maximum light, while the lower part of the leaf is responsible for trapping light. Is responsible for trapping gases. That is, in this case, we are looking for carbon dioxide, because carbon dioxide is needed in the process of photosynthesis. So adaptation to maximize light absorption is each leaf is non-shaded. We call this one leaf mosaic, meaning that one leaf is not shading another leaf, meaning that each leaf is able to trap this light. Number two, wax, transparent wax cuticle. Transparent allows light to go through. Wax, so that it does not allow this water to go through. Very fast, it's not the leaf, the cells will not dry up. This is a protective layer that allows light to enter the leaf. It also waterproof in order to prevent the water loss by evaporation. So it means that it allows, it being waxy, if your skin is waxy, it means that it prevents water from being lost. While being transparent, it means that allow light to go through. Epidermis, transparent, physical is transparent. It's a physical defense layer that does not contain a lot of chloroplast. Yes, it allows light into the leaf so that now this can take place. It allows, if you look at it, yes, it has no chloroplast. Yes, so it is like a barrier, but it allows the light to go through. So this palisade the mesophyll, because it is made up of columnar cells, or cells which are in form of columns, yes, and they are packed, so that they minimize the space between these cells. Look at them, they are packed. It's very small spaces which are there, if you compare to these other ones. Yes, so they are very packed. If you look at them, yes, very packed, so that, and a lot of chloroplast. Check them. These green things you are seeing is chloroplast, so that it allows maximum absorption of this light. Here is the structure which allows the light to be trapped. It's called a chloroplast. So we're going to look at this structure, the structure of a chloroplast. Don't forget that a chloroplast is an organelle. So we can say that structure of a chloroplast. Don't forget that whenever it comes to drawing, you must write what is called a caption or a title. So structure of a chloroplast. Don't forget that a chloroplast is an organelle, and organelles are made up of double membranes. So a chloroplast is made up of an outer layer. Yes, the outer layer is smooth. The also inner layer is smooth. If you compare the chloroplast and the mitochondrion, the inner layer is infolded, but the outer layer is smooth and the inner layer is smooth. So it has the outer layer and the inner layer. The chloroplast is made up of thick sacs, which we call and these thick sacs are interconnected. The thick sacs are interconnected. So if they're interconnected, is also connected to another thick sac. Another thick sac. This one is also connected. So it keeps on connecting to one sac and another sac, one sac and another sac. That's what you see here. Yeah, they are interconnected. So it has the outer layer, then it has the intermembrane space, meaning that the space in between the two layers, and then it has the inner layer. Yes. So these are the sacs we are talking about. So these sacs, each sac is called a thylakoid. Thylakoid. So when you can bring and then say that what is A, what is B, what is C, how do you call the collection of these sacs, what is D, and how do you call these which that is E. So that's what we are looking at here. So it has the outer membrane, has the inner membrane, it has the this sacs. The sac is called the thylakoids. But the space, yes, the space is lumen. And then this is a lamella, but because it is this is called a granum. Yes, each of it is called a granum. If it's one, if there are many, we call them grana. If all of it is called, this is called granum. But if there are many, we call them grana. Yes, this is a plural of granum. So because it has this granum and this granum, so the membrane which connect the two, we can call it lamella. In other books, they can say that intergrana lamella. So the actual name is intergrana lamella. Is a lamella which connect the two grana. You understand? And the pockets where you find the actual green coloring matter, which we call chlorophyll, is called thylakoids. So the thylakoids are the pockets, this the piles where you find the actual what? The actual green coloring matter, which we call the chlorophyll. And then the space where those actual things are, where the thylakoids are found, is what we call, when you cut it, the space inside is what we call the lumen. So the inside of the thylakoid is what we call the lumen. Lumen means a space, a hole. Yes, a space, a hole where some other things are supposed to be in. So this is a simple structure of a chloroplast. But these chloroplasts, these structures, they don't just hang just in air. Inside here, there is a fluid. This fluid is called stroma. Stroma. We don't call it cytoplasm. We don't call it cytoplasm. Why? Because this is not a cell. Cytoplasm, plus means a fluid, and cyto means is derived from the word cell. So is a the fluid of the cell. But because this is not referring to the fluid, yes, it's not referring to the fluid of the cell. Therefore, we can call it stroma. We don't call it cytoplasm. Therefore, we give you a tick for stroma. Yes. So this is a simple structure of a chloroplast. Stroma and the thylakoids, they have a special function they do. You have what called a stroma, and then you have what you call the thylakoids. Yes, stroma, we're going to see that photosynthesis is divided into two phases. What we call the dark phase, and then what we call the light phase. Yes, light phase. And then the dark phase. Because the dark phase occurs in the dark, it does not require light. We can call it light independent phase. Light independent phase. I'm not saying that, write it like this. Yes. And then the light phase, because it requires light, then we shall call it light dependent phase. Light dependent phase. So we're going to see these phases of photosynthesis. So the light dependent phase occurs in the thylakoids, on the granule. And then the light independent phase, which we call the dark phase, occurs in the stroma. Yes. So when we come to the process of photosynthesis, let's look at photosynthesis in detail. Photosynthesis means the manufacture or the synthesis, manufacture, production of what are you manufacturing? You're manufacturing energy in the form of glucose. It means that when you eat food, what you are eating energy. That's why after eating, you get energy. But this energy is not in air. It is in form of glucose. Glucose, or sometimes is in form of carbohydrates. We will understand the difference between glucose and the carbohydrates. Stored in plants, when you say glucose, it means glucose is an example of carbohydrate. Carbohydrate these are energy giving foods, energy giving food, and they are basically produced from the plants. So this glucose is an example of a carbohydrate. So these plants, they have a special way how they store this glucose. So the stored form of glucose is called starch. It's like someone having money at hand and then money in the bank. So the money in the bank might not be that useful until you remove it. Yes. So the money you get when you don't want, you have excess money, what do? You store it in the bank. So when the plant has manufactured glucose and is not going to use that glucose, it stores it in the form of starch. But if it wants the glucose back, then it will change the starch back to glucose. The same way, the same story which happens to animals. So to release oxygen into atmosphere using light. So it does not stop there. It also produces oxygen, but oxygen comes as a byproduct. It comes as a byproduct to the atmosphere. So we benefit through photosynthesis in two ways. Number one, actually three ways. Number one, by getting the glucose the plants have manufactured so that we become full and energetic. Number two, we use the oxygen the plants produce still, because to break down this food which has been manufactured, you require this energy. And then energy is produced again after breaking down. It requires energy. It's like that energy, which is a capital. And then when you put in the business, you put in some capital, then you produce more profits. And then you have a lot now. So you require energy for respiration take place, but at the end of the day, you get more energy, and then we will see the process, we will see respiration in detail. So this produces glucose, that's number one. Number two, produces oxygen, so we benefit from glucose, oxygen. Number three, we also benefit by this photosynthesis taking away the carbon dioxide we have produced in different processes as you saw them in grade 10. So here the plants takes water from the ground, and then sunlight will come in and is being trapped. Once it's being trapped, and then carbon dioxide is produced. Once it's being produced, what happens? Then oxygen is released, and then carbohydrates are what? Are being formed. So this is the actual thing which is happening, or the process. So we're going to look at this process in detail. So what happens is this dark phase and light phase, when they are complete, you will find out that you will have what you call carbohydrate. Yes, you have what you call carbohydrate. So, but carbohydrate does not just come like that. You require carbon dioxide plus H2O, water, and then it must be in presence of light. Light must be there, and then you produce carbohydrates, which is glucose in this case. Glucose, remember carbohydrates, glucose is in the form of a carbohydrate, a monosaccharide. It's a monosaccharide. So plus the oxygen. Plants don't want this oxygen, then the oxygen is released into the atmosphere. This is stored in the form of starch, and then they can use it. So when you go and eat the plant, you're eating this starch, and then you're able to get the energy. So that's actually what is happening in the photosynthesis. Let's look at the process of photosynthesis. The process of photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast in two phases. As I said, you have what you call the light-dependent phase, the light phase, which we call the light-dependent phase, where light is required. It means that if we don't have light, then it means that photosynthesis cannot take place. So we require the first phase, which has light, and then we require the second phase, which the first phase, which has the light, and then we require the second phase. The second phase, it must have no light, which we call the dark phase. It means that during the light phase can be taking place, and then during night, the dark phase can be taking place, because at night, there is no sunlight. So the dark phase, light independent phase, that's where no light is required, but occurs when there is light, meaning that it occurs when there is no what light. Yes. Someone can ask a question that does it mean that the light phase occurs in the light phase, and then during day, and then the dark phase occurs at night? These two, they occur concurrently, meaning that they occur this one is occurring, the other one is also occurring. But if light goes and then the dark phase hasn't finished, it continues until it finishes. But however much light is there, it is not needed in the dark phase. Yes, it is not needed in the dark phase. It's not a must that dark phase must occur at night only. No, it occurs when the light is there, but that light is not needed. So both light phase and dark phase occur in the organelle called the chloroplast. So if they ask you that where does photosynthesis take place, it takes place in the chloroplast. Where exactly? That's where we're gonna look at where does the light phase occurs and where does the dark phase occur. We say that the light phase occurs in the thylakoid, while the dark phase occurs in the stroma. This is just a word equation of photosynthesis, that carbon dioxide plus water plus radiant energy in presence. Radiant energy is trapped by chlorophyll in presence of enzymes. You produce oxygen and the glucose. Oxygen, they can ask you what are the raw materials for the photosynthesis. Raw material is, or what is needed is this two. What is the major product of photosynthesis is glucose. The major product is glucose. What are some of the conditions chlorophyll must be present, and what is the byproduct of photosynthesis? It is oxygen. So oxygen is regarded as a byproduct. It's not the major, so the sole purpose of this process of photosynthesis. It just occurred because we have to produce glucose, but one of the byproduct of glucose of photosynthesis is oxygen. However much is important to our life. Yes. So step one, what happens is the sun. The sun will release this radiant energy. It will release this radiant energy. The radiant energy will be trapped by the leaf. The leaf, we have seen that the leaf has adaptations which make it to be able to trap this light. Yes. If you look at the palisade mesophyll, we say that it is packed with these cells with a lot of chloroplast which trap the sunlight. And then once sunlight is being trapped, what is next? The moment sunlight is trapped, what is next? What traps light is being trapped in the grana. We say that if one is called granum, if the men, we call them grana. But each of it, we call it thylakoid. So is trapped inside the thylakoids or the grana. So this light is very important. What is the function of light? Light has one function. What is the function of the light? Yes, this plant will absorb water from the soil. And then now, this light will be helped to carry out a process called photolysis. Photolysis. For photolysis. Lysis means splitting, and photo means light. You are splitting using light. So it means that this light is going to help to carry out photolysis. Photolysis occurs when water is split into this, not just happening the equation just like this. There is a chemical way how we can present it, but generally, this is what is happening. The water is gonna break down into hydrogen ions plus oxygen. Because we don't need oxygen, then oxygen will move out of the what? Of the leaf. Hence, the first product of Hence, the first product of glucose is the oxygen. So oxygen is released when the process of photosynthesis is just at the beginning. Hence, is not yet a major product. Now, we use this hydrogen ion, this hydrogen ion which is formed. This hydrogen ion will go to the light independent phase, which we call the dark phase. It goes to the dark phase, the light independent phase. But how does this light independent phase get this hydrogen? The light independent phase, or how does this hydrogen go to the dark phase? From the thylakoids, and then it goes to the dark phase. How does it go there? It goes there by use of NAD H. So it's NAD. So what happens is NAD, nicotine amine dinucleotide phosphate, this plus the hydrogen, NADIP, NADIP plus this hydrogen ion, then it forms what you call the NADH2. So basically what happens, you have the NADIP, yes, plus the hydrogen ion which is formed, and then you're gonna form NADH. Yes, you can even go to H2. Yes, NADH. So that's what happens. Now this will move to the dark phase. This is NADIP, so it carries this hydrogen ion and then it goes to the dark phase. It does not stop there. Also, some ATP is being produced. Some ATP is being produced. This ATP is then taken to the light independent phase. It's taken to the light independent phase. Yes. So this is what I'm trying to say, or what I'm trying to talk about. So that we are saying that the light dependent phase, the required radiant energy is absorbed by the chlorophyll in the grana or the thylakoids. Water is then absorbed into the grana of the chloroplast. What happens? The radiant energy, the energy which has the light which is coming from the sun will be used. The radiant energy cause the water to break down, meaning that to split. That process of water splitting into hydrogen ion plus oxygen, we call it photolysis. We call it what? Photolysis. And then now you produce hydrogen ion plus oxygen. Oxygen will move out of the leaf and then it's being released. This oxygen is then released into the atmosphere. Yes, we have seen it via that hole we saw, which is below the leaf. Most of them that are below the leaf, which you call the stomata. So now this energy rich hydrogen, yes, or the energized hydrogen is then formed, or the hydrogen ion then formed during this process of photolysis is then carried by NADIP, meaning that it's gonna be attached to NADIP to form. So this is gonna be attached here and then forms NADIP-H. So now it's the NADIP-H which moves to the dark phase. So the radiant energy caused the energy carrier ATP to be formed, meaning that this is energy rich hydrogen and then the energy carrier. Now the radiant energy also caused the energy carrier ATP to be formed by the process of phosphorylation. Phosphorylation, what happens? Let me show you what happens. Before it is ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate. It means that two phosphate groups. Yes. So what's gonna do is gonna add another inorganic phosphate. So it means that now I have 3 phosphate. Instead of 2, I'm gonna have 3, and 3 is called tri. So it's gonna become adenosine triphosphate, meaning that this is the energy, the usable energy we use in the body. So if you have this, compare plus this, you form this. This is the energy which we use. But this ATP cannot form unless this light is there. So the light has 2 functions. The first one is to carry out what you call photolysis, to split the water, yes, so that it forms hydrogen ion, which combines with NADIP to form NADIP-H. And then now the second function is to make what you call the phosphorylation, to add this ADP to inorganic phosphate, so that there are 3 ATPs, there are 3 phosphates instead of 2, hence to form ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. Then the last phase is what you call the dark phase. So that was the light phase. So what we have seen that now the inorganic phosphate combined with ADP to form ATP. ATP will enter the dark phase. And then also the hydrogen ion, energized hydrogen, will combine with NAD to form NADH. Yes. And then they also enter the dark phase. So this is what is happening. The carbon dioxide now will enter. The dark phase takes place inside the stroma, as I explained. Yes, now the carbon dioxide, that's where carbon dioxide comes in, because we have not talked about carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide occurs in the dark phase, while the light phase, that's where water is being used. So the carbon dioxide, which is absorbed now through the stomata, will combine with the hydrogen, which we got from the light phase, plus the ATP, which we got from the light phase, and then glucose is formed. Glucose is formed. So carbon dioxide, this carbon dioxide, what is the function of carbon dioxide? Don't forget this, that the formula of carbon dioxide, of glucose is C6H12O6. This, we have the oxygen. Yes, from this carbon dioxide, we have the hydrogen from this. And then now, what about this carbon? The carbon will also come from the carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide will help us to provide carbon, oxygen, then the hydrogen will come from the light phase, and then this process is an active process which require energy. The energy is going to be provided by this ATP, which came from the light phase. And then now glucose is what is formed. So when the glucose is formed, that glucose will have maximum energy, so that when we break it down in respiration, then we will release that energy which we have stored here. So glucose, we say that glucose is the usable form of this carbohydrate. It's like money. So when you have the money in the bank, is unusable. Yes, when you want to use it, you have to remove it from the bank using the card, whatever you use. So now here, glucose, what happens is, if it is not going to be used, is now stored as starch. So starch is the storage form of glucose or carbohydrates in plants. In animals is a different story. We shall see it when we go to nutrition. So this is the summary. Carbon dioxide enters the leaf via the stomata. Stomata, we say that if one is called stoma, in the many we call them stomata, from the atmosphere via those holes we saw down, we call them stomata. And then carbon dioxide and then energy-rich hydrogen atom from the light phase, as we have seen them, are combined using ATP. ATP is also from light phase, yes, and then to form carbohydrates, which we call the glucose. The excess glucose, the glucose which is not going to be used. Remember, also these plants, they require to use this glucose. This glucose is meant for them, not for us to eat. No, it's meant for them. The excess glucose will be stored in form of starch, and then where is being stored in the starch in the stroma of the chloroplast. That's why if you look at the structure of the chloroplast, you'll see the starch grains. See the starch grains in there. If you apply the iodine, that's why you'll see that it turns blue-black. Why? Because that leaf has what you call glucose, or not glucose, it has what you call the starch. So this is the generalized process. Step one, light is strikes the leaf. The leaf, what happens? The light is used to split the water here. Carbon dioxide is produced. So this light, which is from the sun, will split this water in the grana, and then oxygen is raised. The hydrogen will enter the dark phase, including the ATP, goes to the Kelvin cycle. And then what happens there? Carbon dioxide will come in here, and then it will combine with the hydrogen, which is being produced from the light phase using the ATP, and then the sugar is produced, which is glucose. Now the ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and NADP plus will go back to the light phase, and then being used over and over and over again. So basically, that is the process of photosynthesis. I know that students, they have a big challenge when it comes to this process. Just in 1 minute, look at this, the differences between the light phase and the dark phase. Light phase occurs only in presence of light, as you hear the word, and then the dark phase occurs in absence of light. Light phase, it is a photochemical phase. It means that it is a process, but that process requires light. That process is being facilitated by the light. Yes. While a dark phase is a biochemical, it brings about this life. So these chemicals is biological chemicals which are happening. So it takes place in the granum. Granum, remember, is the combination of different thylakoids which form this sac, which you call the granum. And then this one takes place in the stroma. The stroma is the fluid of the chloroplast. That's where the reaction takes place of the dark phase. NADP utilizes hydrogen ion to form NADP-H. And then here, the NADP-H will combine with carbon dioxide to form the glucose in presence of ATP. Here, the end product is ATP and NADP-H, while the other side, the NADP and ATP are being used, meaning that the end product will be glucose. Here, water will split, and then hydrogen and oxygen are being released, while here, glucose is produced. Glucose is produced. Carbon dioxide is utilized in this dark phase. So when I come back, I will talk about the factors which affect photosynthesis, and then we do some experiments which we usually ask in exam about photosynthesis. Why is light necessary for photosynthesis? Why is carbon dioxide necessary for photosynthesis? The starch, all those experiments, we have to do them so that we see them, and then I show you how do we answer questions concerning about that. But don't forget, food for thought. What are some of the importance of photosynthesis? See you then in the next